morning, students. This is part 2 of lecture number 5, coming to our session where we left before. We had done the scope of variables, scripts, and function examples. So we were on the examples of scripts and functions. We had done the example of scripts in the previous lecture, which was to calculate the factorial of a given natural number. In today's lecture, we will do an example of how to write a function file or how to code in the function variable using MATLAB. So at here you can see we have a function summation. Basically, it has a summation of C0, C1x, C2, so on, Cn. So it is basically a row vector of which contained two variables C0 and x. So it has a row vector of C and x containing, and its power x is power up to n. So it has, so for our simple case, we have considered C naught is equals to 1 and Cm is equals to 1 by m, which is basically a multiplication, element by element multiplication is called Cm. So let's do this example in our MATLAB and let's see how this example and how the function file be working on that. Okay, so let's coming to our MATLAB. Edit command for open editor of MATLAB. You can use several editors just like Windows Notepad and others softwares too, but I do not recommend that editors because MATLAB has its own editor and it's very convincible and very useful for you to use MATLAB's inbuilt editor to edit the commands of MATLABs. Let's start. Let's let's start with the file name. I already my function file is my func4 file. I have already created this file called my func4file.m file for the function commands. You can use your suggested name, or you can use your own names of your files like factorial file, my function file, my dash dash dash, and so on. So I use my func4 file name of that file name. So let's start it with the example. At here you can see we have f. F is basically a function of c and x. So first of all, we have to define what is c and what is x. So let's define the c. So basically c is equal to 1. Why we consider c is equals to 1? Because we have already mentioned in our example that in today we will consider c naught. The first element of this row vector summation would be 1. So let's go in. C is equals to 1. We have defined c is equals to 1, and then we have to define what actually x. So let's put another variable. A is equals to from 1 comma 1 dot slash vect 1 comma 1 dot slash vec. Do not take worry about this vec. We will define it okay. So what is going to be vec? Vec is basically going to be a number of elements containing in the file f. Okay, so we have 1 colon n. N is basically the natural number the number of elements is basically, n is the number of elements where we want to do a submission. How many elements we want to do submission? Okay, so VAC is basically a submission of them. And what is mean by one dot over slash one dot slash VAC? It is basically going to be done, it is going to basically done element by element multiplication. It is going to be element by element multiplication of C and X. Sorry, my mistake, it won't be X, it would be this. Okay, so C would be C, and C is what? First element is 1. So C would be first element 1, and then after the first element got by VAC is basically 1 by colon n. So the second element would be go 2, so C2 is equals to 2 and something else. Like coming on to the next variable, which is X. We have to define the X. A is equals to square bracket 1. We have to assign the first X to a number 1 because we want to do it at the number 1 comma X dot multiply by VAC. In this code, every element will got multiplied by VAC variable. VAC variable is basically nothing but the uh, basically a colon notion, okay, which is convert its value to 1 to 3, 1 to 2 to 3, 4, and so on as per our required value. Okay, so it will compute the value of X. Now coming to the result, what the result will going be on? Result would be C multiply by C dot multiply by A. What is this command? Oh, sorry. Let me first initialize the function file. We didn't initialize it yet, so first we have to do initialize the function file. It's my mistake, I initialize. Let's initialize the function file. Let's call the function result is equal to my func4 file, and we have the number of variables we used in that kind of function file. So we have used the variable n and the variable x. We have to be very careful while we are working on the function kind of file format because it's very case sensitive filing. And then so this line would give me the result of element by element multiplication of C and X. But what we actually want, this would this as you can see, this file or this command will give me the multiplication of every single element. Okay, like C2 x2 x square C1 x. It will give me the element by element summation of C times x. But what we actually want, we want the function f, okay, which are the summation. For summation, we will simply put sum. Okay, so this would give me the complete solution of that particular row vector summation which multiplied by element into C or X. And let's end this format. So this is a kind of format which will give me the result of this particular equation, which is the basically a row vector of containing C and X. So let's save this file. Make sure that everything going to be very case sensitive, so use it very carefully. Control S. Let's save this file. And coming back to our command prompt or command window, let's call this file myfunc file. Let's call myfunc file. It's called result equal to myfunc4 file, and then n. We have to put n. As you can see, this shows me that give the value of n. So let's took the value of n and let's take it 8. 8 comma, now give the value of x. X is basically what? The multiplication of that row vector or the row vector's element by element. So let's take this 0.5. okay, and then this would be this will give me the result of that particular this particular equation where n is equals to 6 and x is equals to 0.5. So n is equal to 8 and 0.5 the x. Okay. So we have an error, the unrecognized function or variable vac. Okay, so we didn't initialize the vac vector at here. So let's look at our edit function file that we didn't initialize the vac vector actually. Okay, so this is the vac. Let's put this vac over this. Let's try this again. Result is equal to myfunc4 file. Let's try this time 6, 0.1. So as you can see, it gave me the result of that particular equation where n is equal to 6 and x is equal to 0.5. Let's try with 8 and 0.5 also. Result is equal to myfunc4 file 8, 0.5. So as you can see, now it gave me a result which is a 5. So basically, what was the error? Let me take you the error. What was the error? Because as you know, the MATLAB has executes the command one by one. So basically, this command will execute, and after that command is executed. We didn't initialize this before that given statements. We initialize this vector command, or we we defined this vector command after the statements, so which the MATLAB did not accept it. So whether we have to first initialize or define the variables first, and after then take your statements. Okay, so when we do with that, this kind of function will be giving you the answer. So this is the end of lecture, and the end of lecture we would like to you to introduce the when to use scripts files or when to use function kind of files in MATLAB. So always use scripts when you want to make small calculation, or when you want to make a single variable calculations like factorial, plotting, and basic computing. We will always use scripts files in MATLAB. So when to use function files, be very careful while you are using function files, because as you can see that we have R variable which has the R variable, which is also a sub variable of t and y. So as you can see at here, R is a function of t and y. So when we have multivariable and we have to compute the multivariable questions, we will always use function files. But I remind you day after day that always be careful while working on function kind of files. So the third point is pass the function values to MATLAB function for solving something. Example, we have the ODE problems like ordinary differential equation problems. Like let's take an example. Let's Dhoni had hit the ball by 45 angles. So we have ordinary differential equation of 45. So dy by dt is that is a function of distance and time. So that is a ODE kind of problem. So we will use that, which is the ODE is basically a function of time and displacement or the distance. So we will use at that problem in functions. So calculate properties as a function of temperature, concentration, current, or etc. So function files are also be used where we have to compute the temperature, like saturation temperature, which is a function of time and temperature, and concentration like current is also a function of charge and time. Okay, so we have to, where we have the multivariable things, so conclusion is where we have to multivariable things, or a variable basically has a function of multiple variables, where we used to use function files. Rather than all other purposes, you are strongly recommended to use scripts file, because in previous lecture we had done multiple questions in script files. We did not use function file because functions are a special case, and we will use this in the upcoming high advanced questions on the problems. So at this end of chapter, I would like to request to all of you to do some problems of these scripts and functions, and do some questions of this. Okay, the this divide by dt problem we will do it in the module 3. So by this I had coming to the ending of the chapter. So good night, bye bye.